Hey everyone, welcome back to School of Love, where we want to help you create parent-child relationships where you can talk about anything, especially about sex. Today I have a really great couple, Tony and Alisa DiLorenzo from One Extraordinary Marriage. And yeah, they are podcasters for already 16 years. I think you guys hit
Yes.
what do you call it? Anniversary recently. And have 895 episodes plus, I think even more than that. And yeah, they're one of the top marriage podcasts and help couples all around the world as marriage coaches to help them in their commitment, love, and sex life. And they're authors of the book 6 Pillars of Intimacy. And yeah, if I can just add on, like, I found you guys also, I think lots of couples maybe don't right away need coaching, but podcasting is such a nice indirect way to get some help. And so I also found you guys that way and fell in love with your podcast. Yes. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, we're honored. And you're right. A lot of people don't necessarily need coaching right away, but hopping onto a podcast, just like being here at School of Love, where they can hear ideas and talk about them and then take them into their own marriage and start to see transformation and change. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thank you so much. Also for the indirect help that you guys gave to me. It was really, really great. And I think there is a really big reason why you guys are one of the top marriage podcasts. And so, yeah, School of Love, it's all about learning about sex in a safe space of the family, especially, from parents. That's what I want to do, is encourage parents to have little conversations one at a time, as opposed to, kids learning randomly from unsafe sources and seeing misleading content. And so a part of that is really, kids inherit however the parents are talking about sex, and, there's body language, there's tone. And so, some things that I talk about with parents is that we need to think about, how do I feel about sex as an individual? And then how do we as a couple feel about sex? And so, we got to be living the example. It's not just screen habits or diet or cleanliness, but also romance. And I feel like you guys talk about this a lot. I just wanted to ask if you want to speak into this. What I also felt for myself is that I know, like, my oldest daughter is 12 and she's really interested in romance. And so I felt, I need to be a good example of what healthy romance is. I just wanted to ask if you guys want to speak into this kind of living the example and how that is also sex education.
Absolutely. And I want to say, first and foremost, we have 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 23-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter. So we have raised our children in a home where we have talked about sexual intimacy. Even as I was listening to you just share there at the beginning, I was thinking back to a time when our daughter, the now 20-year-old, was probably, I think she was in 2nd grade. And we're sitting down to dinner one day, and she just makes this declaration in the middle of dinner that she knows what sex is. And as a mom, you're just kind of sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, like,
Well, 2nd grade, how old was she? 8?
7?
7, 8?
7,
Yeah.
8. And you freeze for a second because the thought goes through, are we really having this conversation at dinner time?
Mm-hmm.
Is this okay? And so I took a deep breath, and then I said, well, honey, what did you learn today? And she said, well, Mom, like, of course, everybody knows this. Well, Mom, sex is when a man and a woman are under the covers and they're kissing. And I paused and I'm like, well, not an inaccurate description, but in that moment, and I think this is just so important for us parents to know, is that meet your kids where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And just frame it for them in that moment. So I said, you're so close, honey. You're so close. we recognize that sex is between a husband and a wife who are under the covers and kissing. And so I just gave her that one little framing, didn't make a big deal about it, didn't freak out about it, didn't say, oh my gosh, what's going on at the schools? It was just like, okay, you know what? We just need to own this as parents. And that was one of those conversations that I think had like set the stage for both kids throughout their life to be able to go, oh, I can bring things up to my mom and dad and they're not going to freak out.
Yep.
And I can have a conversation with them because we've always wanted to be our kids' first point of information when it came to sexual intimacy.
Yeah, that sounds so awesome. I think that's really kind of the key point, right? Like how we react and that the kids know it's safe. Yeah, with me it's safe. And I really am glad you guys, I feel like you were ahead of your time because just having that desire to be the first point of information is so important. And a lot of us kind of miss out on that. I also had to discover this for myself and, not so sure I was ahead of the game with my oldest kids, but it helps me learn for the later ones.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Well, and I think it's important too as parents, like, and what you just said there is important. We are still learning, like with our children. The firsts are always the one we kind of like start to figure things out with, and we get better as we go on. But it's also recognizing, and this was something that Tony and I had to recognize, is what are the messages that we have about sex? What are our beliefs? How do we handle it? Because neither one of us grew up in a family with parents who would talk about sexual intimacy or, were even approachable to have those conversations. And so we had to determine from a very early stage in our marriage and specifically our children's lives, how we were going to get more comfortable ourselves so that we could have these conversations with our kids.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that even deeper. Like, how do we get even more comfortable ourselves? One podcast I did with a sexologist, Patricia Rirakun, she was saying what she suggests for parents is, have fun talking about it as a couple before you talk about it with your kids. Because it just warms you up to the topic and it's good anyway to talk about. But yeah, I would love to hear, like, how did you guys make that kind of a more of a comfort zone? For you guys.
Well, I think for us, it's living it out. I think if you aren't having sex, right? Like you actually as a married couple are not being sexually intimate, it becomes harder to talk about it to your children. And as Alisa said and shared, neither one of us were like, oh, our parents sat us down and we had conversations and we sort of meandered on these conversations. Like my dad came up to me when I think I was like 14 or 15 years old. And basically the sex talk, the birds and the bee talk for me was basically, hey, Tone, don't get a girl pregnant. And he walked away. That was it. And so for Alisa and I, it's very similar to what you're saying with this sexologist is we had to become comfortable. And that took some time. It wasn't like, oh, we got married and we were talking about sex and we were all good with it. It took us some time to feel comfortable talking to one another. And as we became more comfortable talking about it, when these things came up from the children, we could address it. There was no shame. There was no guilt. There was no fear about it. It was more like, okay, let's talk to them where they are. When you have an 8-year-old who says something to you, we are adults. We are the adults in the room. We are the parents in the room. And you have to gauge where they are and not jump to, oh my gosh, they know what sexual intercourse is and everything that comes with it. As our youngest said, it was, kissing between a man and a woman under the sheets. So you sort of have to take a step back, take a deep breath, be there together. Sometimes I couldn't say anything because I was like, whoa, where are we going? And I would look at Alisa and I'd be like,
that's another story.
I need you to take this because I'm not sure where we're at here. But we tag team. And because we had such a vibrant, I would say, emotional intimacy around our sex life, it was easier for us to talk to our children about it.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Thanks, Tony. And it really kind of just bleeds into this, yeah, we need to live the example. And that's also what I want to ask you guys about, because, what if some parents aren't especially inspired about sex right now? I think a lot of them might be, unfortunately. I mean, there are different times in our lives,
Sure.
which you guys are experts on, right? But especially as a parent of young kids, young curious kids, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, they are young and curious, but also very demanding. And so, yeah, lots of moms are burnt out, or, yeah, many things come into the equation, right? And so, yeah, what can parents do when they aren't especially inspired about sex? But yeah,
And
we need to be somehow living the example.
I think this is important to recognize that we do go through, within a marriage, within our family, span, we go through different seasons. You think about the newlywed season, no kids, we can, be sexually intimate kind of whenever, wherever. And then you start having children and you have at least one or multiple other human beings in your world that are demanding and touching and not sleeping and waking up super early and all of the things. And it can be very easy, specifically for sexual intimacy, to take a back seat because these little
Mm-hmm.
human beings require so much energy and attention. And even in our own marriage, we suffered from this.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to a point where we had to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, are we missing a vital point of connection in our marriage because we're saying that we're too tired? We're saying that we don't have time. We're saying it's not important. And if we keep down that path, where's our marriage going to end up? Because if we do our
Mm-hmm.
jobs well, 99% of the time, our kids are going to grow up and leave. And we'll still be with each other, ideally. So, what does it look like to set the stage where this becomes the most important relationship? And our children get to see that modeled. That doesn't mean you're having sex every single day. Like when you have little kids, that's hard. Even when you don't have little kids in the house, that is hard. But it's saying, what is the vision for sexual intimacy that we can honor and maintain in our relationship at this point in time when they're little? It may be, Saturday or Sunday, they're taking a nap and you're like, this is our time. We've got, half hour, 45 minutes. We're going to make the most of it together. We're going to prioritize our marriage. And we know during the week, maybe we can't. But it's also finding out, you mentioned your daughter being interested in romance right now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I coach a lot of couples on is, what is romance to you in this season? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you've got the little kids, when they're demanding and all this kind of stuff, romance might just be, wrap your arm around me, pull me in tight and say, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful and I'm glad we get to do this together. Or it might be, sit down and have a cup of tea with me at the end of every evening, and that might be romance. But so often we don't have those conversations with our spouses, and so they don't romance well, and that leads to even greater disconnect.
Yeah, thanks, Alisa. And you know what? I just want to say, guys, check out their podcast. They have so many great podcasts on this, but also you guys have lots of like PDFs or lists online, right? That I found also really helpful, like really cute things to really deep things, like suggestions like what I really liked was hiding notes around the house for your spouse, like little love notes. Or yeah, like I don't remember how many questions, but it was like a certain amount of questions leading to intimacy.
19 questions
So
to amazing sex.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so these are really great tips that you guys have offered. And I just wanted to mention that when you said, yeah, what is romance right now? I love what you said. It's just, yeah, what can we really offer to each other right now and have that honest conversation? It's going to be different from, the honeymoon phase that we went through, but it's still important. It's just as important. And yeah, to just look it in the eye and be like, what can we do right now? Yeah. And maybe it is, leaving notes or having those questions on car drives. My husband and I did that
Yes.
before, when the
Awesome.
kids were sleeping in the car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome what you guys have to offer. So, yeah, big shout out
Thank
to One Extraordinary Marriage, you guys.
thing. Well, and we've been married for 29 years, Amelia, and the podcast, as you
Hmm.
shared, has been going for 16 years. So anybody who listens can get a glimpse into where we have been, and we've shared those seasons
Mm-hmm.
over those 16 years of sharing our lives on the podcast. And one of the things I would say is it doesn't ever end. Like, it just doesn't end. Our children are older, so some people may be going, oh, it's easy for you to say now because your children are 23 and 20, no big deal. No, it doesn't end. They're still looking at us. They're still watching us. They're our children. They want to see
Mm-hmm.
how we are engaging with one another. And even at 23 and 20, we let them know that their parents, their mom and dad, are sexually intimate. And lo and behold, that's the way it is. And they're like, oh gosh, you guys don't need to tell us that. Like, but we want them to see that after 29 years of marriage, we are still in love. We are still engaging with one another because we want to continue to create our own extraordinary marriage. And so it's not this thing like, oh, when they're younger, I really got to be concerned about it. It's through every stage, and it's trying to engage with them, talking about these topics when they do get older and they don't want to talk about it, but you sort of have to engage with them, maybe because they find pornography on a computer or on a phone, or somebody shows it to them, or somebody starts talking to them about oral sex or things of that nature in school. That happens, and you got to just engage and go, hey, like, we're here.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, it is between a husband and a wife. And that's the way we see it. And that's the best, because Alisa and I, prior to marriage, had sex out of that covenant of marriage. And it was empty and it was shallow. And so we've been through this, and we can share that with them if they so choose to want to listen at this point in time in their lives.
Yeah, wow. That's so awesome, Tony. I love the example that the kids are still looking at us. Like, okay, my kids aren't that old yet, but that they're still looking at you, and that's such an important point. That's what we want to be, is also examples, throughout life, and not just
Yes.
when they're in the house. I mean, of course, I feel in the house it's really hands-on, but yeah, that's really inspiring to know they're still looking at you. And I think, yeah, we should never forget to, it's just inspiring to know, yeah, we need to just always invest into our marriage. And that's also what's good for us. That's also what inspires me so much, is living the example for my kids. It's also good for me, not just in marriage, but all throughout life, with keeping myself healthy, giving myself spiritual nourishment, all of these things. I find, when I'm really thinking of my kids, I need to be thinking of myself.
Yes.
Very good point. Very good point. And some people might hear us say this and feel like, oh my gosh, that's such a burden, to think that they're always watching. And yet it's just such an incredible privilege, because there are so many inputs for our children, no matter what age they are, about relationships, about marriage, and even about, sexual intimacy in marriage. And we have always seen it as just a tremendous privilege that we get to be our children's first teachers in these areas. We get to be the loudest voice. And that's what I would say, parents, you if you choose it, you can be the loudest voice that everything else has to kind of filter through. If you will develop the courage to have the conversations with your spouse and practice it, because it does take practice. How Tony and I talk about sexual intimacy now is not how we talked about it when we first got married. But we've practiced. I mean, you mentioned all of our podcast episodes. We've been practicing for 16 years how to talk about sexual intimacy. We started when our kids were 7 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So they've grown up with us talking about it. They've grown up seeing us talk together. And it's taken a lot of courage over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But we are seeing, and this is encouragement to parents, we're seeing the benefits in the fact that our children will talk to us about relationships, that we do hear about what's going on. We knew what was going on with friends during high school and that type of thing. And so when we will be the first voice, we get to build that relationship with our kids.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That's also, I mean, yeah, it's nice to know that this sort of education sort of life span exists, because I feel like this kind of experience doesn't exist so often, where kids kind of grow up learning so comfortably about sex. And then, so we don't know so often, like, how does that pan out into, their own relationships? I really believe that when we start talking about it and are their first source of knowledge, that this is such a great foundation for them and their future sex lives, because, they already grow up feeling comfortable around the topic. They can express themselves, and then that creates the hopefully future comfort in their own relationship where they can express themselves there too, right? Yeah, is there any, like, is it really like that? Because it's really what I hope for my kids.
It
I mean,
is.
you kind of mentioned.
It is. And here's what I'd say with this, Amelia. Last night, my youngest, our daughter, she and I did a daddy-daughter date. We just went out, grabbed some dinner, and it was interesting. We began to start talking a little bit about what we're doing here at One Extraordinary Marriage, and I was talking about a possible live event that we're looking to put on here. And she's like, I'm going to come to your events when I'm married. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. And I'm going to point you out and we're going to talk about this stuff. And she's like, you better not, Dad. And we're just having a good time. I go, the reason I would do that is because I want you and your husband to enjoy this, just like your mom and I do. And so I would hope that you would be at those events with us and learn and talk to others. I go, because I think it would be beneficial, not only for your mom and I to see you there, but for you to be there and experience other couples who are newlyweds to, I mean, we have folks in the one family who have been married 50 plus years. And so I think it would be a benefit to you to be there as well. But, I may point you out.
Well,
have fun.
And one of the things I want to share.
Heads up.
As you mentioned, the podcast is 16 years old. We had that anniversary earlier this year. We've been around so long, and we've had the privilege to speak into so many people's marriages and to get them comfortable having these conversations, that we are now, over the last, I think, 4, maybe 5 years, we've started seeing the second generation of One Extraordinary Marriage, the one family, because we have children now, young adults, whose parents started listening to us 16, 15, 14 years ago, and now they're getting married. And so they're starting their marriages, being able to have these conversations.
And having kids of their own now.
Yeah. We've got one family that we know in particular. Mom and dad started listening to the podcast probably 14, 15 years ago. The son got married during COVID, so maybe 5 years ago now.
5 years ago.
And the son just had his first baby. The son and daughter-in-law just had their first baby. And so we are now in that family 3 generations deep. I mean, obviously she's a baby, but with marriages that are focused on being extraordinary. And so my encouragement is, even if you're worried about talking about sex, even if you feel like you don't know how to do it, just have one short conversation, and then, a little while down the road, have another conversation. Don't make it be this big epic conversation you have to have. Just start practicing little conversations, because we are actually living in a place where generations now are being impacted by creating their extraordinary marriage.
That's so spectacular. Like, wow, that's amazing. So one thing I also wanted to ask, because sometimes I hear some parents, being concerned about their kids, especially in the area of sex-related topics, but their marriage is actually suffering. So I'm just wondering, like, where can they start? I mean, like, I think these parents, what they think is, I need to teach my kids this and this and that. But yeah, their marriage actually isn't in a place where they want it. So it's hard for me to say it so directly, but the instinct is, you got to be starting to live what you say, or, you got to I mean, you got to start working on your marriage. Yeah, where can these parents start?
Well, I think my first gut reaction to that is it comes out of, the book I wrote, The 6 Pillars of Intimacy. And for every pillar of intimacy, there were 2 questions that I asked in the book. One was, what can I do? And the second question is, what can we do? And those 2 questions are in there for every pillar because I truly believe when we feel like we're stuck, when we feel like we don't know what to do, the first place to go is to look in the mirror and look at the person that stares back at you and say, what can I do right now? Is that carving out time, 10 or 15 minutes to have a conversation? Is it choosing to sit next to my husband or my wife on the couch? Is it making time for a date? Is it having a conversation about sex? What is it? What can I do? What can I initiate to start drawing us closer? Because you're right, you can't have the conversations about sex with your kids if the two of you feel very disconnected, if you don't feel like you can, if you feel like you're stuck. You have to start on what can I do so that we can get to a what can we do? What's the team approach? And then how do we create an extraordinary marriage?
Such a powerful question. Yeah. What can I do? Because and then also just to reflect on that, you can do so much. Like you said, those little things, they really do add up, right? It's actually a great gesture, just sitting next to your spouse on the couch, right? Yeah. Thank you, Alisa. And yeah, I also wanted to ask you to explain the 6 pillars of intimacy. Yeah, in a nutshell, I guess. Yeah, because they're so, so great.
Happy to do that. The 6 pillars of intimacy were born out of us being asked to speak at an event during COVID. We lived in California at the time. We were on lockdown. We were doing this event, and we had always been known for talking about sexual intimacy. But Tony really felt it was so important during that season that we really look at marriage holistically. And how can couples create intimacy, closeness, and connection in different areas? Because like I tell folks often when we speak, you cannot be having sex 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we need to know how to connect in other areas, right? So to be able to maintain that on a daily basis. So let's talk about the 6.
Yeah. So those 6 pillars, Amelia, and when we say intimacy, I just want to say this again for the listeners to hear. Intimacy is, by definition, closeness and connection. And so when we share each of these, what we're sharing is how can you be close and get connected to your spouse? So the first one is your emotional intimacy, your verbal, nonverbal communication, which we've been talking about here today.
Yes. And then physical intimacy is non-sexual touch. I know a lot of people, and even on social media and media platforms and things like that, will say physical intimacy, meaning sexual intimacy. But what we've come to realize in all of our years and all of our work is that there is non-sexual touch that is incredibly important to a marriage. It's the hugs, it's the hand holding, and then sexual intimacy, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. And then we got financial intimacy. This has to do everything with your finances, from cash flow, budget, to wills, trusts, and everything else in between, insurances. So that's your financial intimacy.
The 4th pillar is your spiritual intimacy. And these are your faith practices, how you share your faith beliefs and the practices the two of you engage in together.
Yeah. 5th one is recreational intimacy. And this is actually our fun pillar. This is the activities you do together. So you are having fun with one another, and it just sort of lightens up everything else. Like, let's just go play a board game or a card game, or go do something, go bowling, or something that's just fun.
And the 6th pillar is sexual intimacy. It's the one everybody thinks we'd be leading with. But we actually put it at the end because working on all of these other 5 actually allows you to have stronger sexual connection. And the other thing too that we did when we, wrote the book and put this framework together for couples is we expanded the definition of sexual intimacy to be more than just intercourse, because foreplay, initiating romance, all contribute and are all factors in having strong sexual intimacy. And when it's not just did we or didn't we have sex, it gives couples so much more opportunity for connection.
Yep.
for that closeness that they're craving, and it doesn't make it a yes or no pillar of intimacy. It's really much more holistic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great. And, when I learned about your 6 pillars, it was such an eye-opener, especially just to realize that a lot of disconnect, personally, in my marriage happens because of financial intimacy. Like, it's amazing that you wouldn't think like such a kind of, I don't know, pragmatic or logistical thing can really get to so deep. But yeah, I mean, reflecting on it kind of now, it makes sense. We kind of both grew up in families where, financial issues were tense. And so this kind of has come up in our marriage sometimes, and it just has been sometimes uncomfortable, especially for me,
Yeah.
if any kind of financial issue comes up. But yeah, being aware of it, that becomes, then you can really just be on top of it more, I think.
Right.
And that's powerful. I'm grateful that you shared that, because financial intimacy is one of those pillars that, some couples might not think it contributes to the disconnect. Like you said, very pragmatic. It's about money. But the truth is, there's a lot of feelings of security, of worth,
Mm-hmm.
of stability that are tied up in that. And when that feels a little shaky, it can be hard to connect emotionally or physically or sexually. And like you said, now you've got this awareness. Now you can put language around it. And now the two of you can actually be on the same team and do something about it. And this is true of any of the listeners today, to go, oh, we're not, a mess. We just have a crack. We have some issues in this one pillar. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you guys also had a podcast on secrets, and I think, I realized I was maybe keeping a secret from my husband about some sort of financial issue. And then that's kind of a big giveaway, like, oh, this is quite uncomfortable for me. And, any kind of secret, I think you guys mentioned it. I don't know the podcast name, sorry, but it does just become some sort of stumble in your intimacy, and eventually even can be a stumble in your sex life, right? So yeah, I just wanted to share that because all these things are so important.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because of the stress, Amelia, especially around your financial intimacy, it can create that disconnection around our sexual intimacy, which then goes, okay, well then how do we get that back on track so then we can talk to our children about it? And Alisa and I have been there. We went through the Great Recession and lost everything, lost our home, lost it all. And so we've gone down these paths before and can come out the other side going, yes, we've been there. We've had to learn how to discuss and even work through our sexual intimacy, because you feel like pulling away when something like that, especially around money, that's a big breach of trust and protection and caring for me, or from one of the spouses going, how are you caring for me and the family? That creates that disconnect of like, why would I want to have sex with you then? And yet if we can share those secrets, we can verbalize that emotional intimacy. Hey, this is what's going on. I think more times than not, that vulnerability, that release of tension actually draws us closer together and actually brings us to a point of wanting to be sexually intimate with one another, because there's so much vulnerability within those conversations. It's like, this is the thing I get to do with you. And because you were so open and honest and transparent and vulnerable with me, and me with you, like the lovemaking becomes so much more passionate and close. And it's like, okay, we still got each other. We're going to make it through. And I think there have been many times over the years that we have had those moments. And it could be financial intimacy. It could be with other pillars, but it's sort of like, okay, like let's take off the mask and let's get vulnerable.
Yeah, that's so true. And vulnerability, that's really where that's the true sexy, not to make a new catchphrase or something, but that's
Right,
really
yeah.
what can make you feel close, right? Yeah, actually, I was just listening to your last podcast, and you said something, Alisa, that I just wanted to mention here again. And you said, when sexual intimacy is not part of a marriage over time, a couple will not only lose the act of sexual intercourse, but they can lose confidence, closeness, and emotional safety. Yeah, you probably remember because you said it so recently. And these are things that are so essential for a family. That's why I felt like called out to repeat this. And yeah, just for parents to hear that sexual intimacy is so important. Yeah, because of these things, confidence, closeness, emotional safety, you want your kids to have that, then you need to feel that, right? In your own marriage. And yeah, if it's all connected to sexual intimacy, then we need to work on it.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's a choice, Amelia, right? Because I heard this quote the other day that when we get married, what we're choosing is monogamy, not celibacy. And it really hit me because, here's what as you bring that quote even just back from that last podcast, this idea of building this very intimate relationship with another human being, not just a partnership, not just a roommate, but what does this monogamous relationship look like? This monogamous sexual relationship look like with the person that we have chosen to marry? And how does that, when it's healthy and regular, and I'm not prescribing a certain number to what regular is. It's what's healthy and regular for each and every couple listening. But when it's a regular part of your marriage, it does bring confidence. It does bring safety. And when the two of you are working on it, when it's not just like, oh, I've got to do this, but it's, we want to do this, there's a foundation that's built in the marriage, because it's not just the sexual intimacy, it's also the emotional intimacy. And those two things coming together really become like a superpower for couples. When they have strong emotional intimacy and strong sexual intimacy, and they're leaning into both of it, it is a strength that very few things can actually destroy.
Wow. You guys, let's be super parents with our super sexual intimacy. Yeah, that's really awesome. And yeah, just to echo what you said also in the other podcast, was that rebuilding sexual intimacy doesn't start in the bedroom, you said. It really, it starts with all these intimacies from the 6 pillars, right? Yeah, or I think it was Mark Gungor, he was saying like, it's like throughout the day, you need to find these moments to score points. I don't know. It depends on how you are, if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, to really just, yeah, take every moment to connect.
I was just going to say, it really gets to the point of being intentional. Whether we're learning how to talk about sexual intimacy with our children, or whether we're fostering sexual intimacy in the marriage, it's not waiting for the perfect opportunity. It's taking the opportunities as time presents itself and saying, you know what, I'm just going to do a little bit today. I'm going to do a little bit tomorrow, because it's all of those little moments that add up that not only give us the confidence, but also pour into our children.
Yeah, which is so important, so worth it. Yeah. I know this can be sometimes a tough topic for many parents, especially the high desire, low desire challenges. It's really tough. My husband and I have definitely been there. But yeah, I feel like my children are so often a motivational point for me, whether it's to improve my spiritual life, or to just be healthy, to develop my knowledge, all of these things. And yeah, my marriage and my romantic relationship as well. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that, for parents, if they are maybe in a point or at a place where it's just especially tough, maybe it's hard to see it like you're doing it for yourself or for your spouse, but your kids, this is I feel like it's always a must when you think about them. And yeah, it just really does give them so much, like the superpower, right? It really gives them so much when they feel safe. Like, my parents are doing great. I feel safe, Otherwise, I feel like, yeah, really the opposite can happen, you know. It's like, oh, I'm not safe about this. How do I focus on math, you know, or how do I focus fully on, you know, being a great friend to this person, you know, because I don't know if my parents are doing okay. Um, so yeah, I just always want to give that safety to my children and work through those challenges, right? They help us to grow in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you would like to say anything about sex challenges, because that's something I learned about from you guys.
We have done a number of them. That's
At
for
least
sure.
one every year since 2008.
Yes.
Um,
We actually wrote a book called 7 Days of Sex Challenge.
mhm.
Okay.
After we got so many questions asked, because we would share about it on the One Extraordinary Marriage show, and we actually did a number of articles around it over the years. And so we wrote a book about it. And one of the things that we love to share with couples often is sometimes we need a little something different in our normal everyday, what's been going on.
Mhm.
And for Alisa and I know some people don't like challenge, you know, you can say whatever you want with it. I mean, I just know some people are like, oh, a challenge, that doesn't sound like fun or anything for me. It's like, okay, call it a 7-day adventure or whatever you want to call it. But for Alisa and it really is an adventure and a challenge in terms of being sexually intimate 7 days in a row or more, depending on what we choose to do. And really what it does, it takes us out of the mundane of what we've been doing and makes us, our marriage, our sexual intimacy, a priority. So it doesn't matter what may be going on in our lives between work, between children, between the house, between anything else. We are still going to make time for one another. And like Alisa said, we have done a challenge of some length of 7 days or more since 2008.
Mhm.
And each time we do it, we learn something new. Sometimes they have been absolutely the best thing because we needed a reset in our own lives to realize like we had been putting ourselves sort of to the back burner.
Mhm.
Other times it's just been sort of like ho hum. And other times it's just been like, oh my gosh, a little bit of both, but realizing each time we do it, we are strengthening our pillars. We are strengthening our marriage and we're making our marriage a priority. So it's, to me, it's one of the, I don't know, it's just one of those things that it just changes up the day to day. And Alisa and I need to engage with one another differently. So that way we can be sexually intimate daily.
And the only other thing I would add to that is the sexual act is the catalyst.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's not the goal. The goal is the connection
Yes.
that we are seeking with one another. Even when we did our first challenge, which was the 60-day sex challenge, which launched everything that is One Extraordinary Marriage, you know, I look back on that 2-month window and yes, we had a daily commitment to one another to be sexually intimate, but the connection that grew out of making our marriage a priority. And that's really, it doesn't matter if you do 7, 14, 21. I mean, there are some people in our audience, Amelia, who have gone well over 200 days in a year being sexually intimate.
Wow.
God bless them.
Amazing.
Respect. Respect, yeah.
I've never done that many.
We have not. They have. They're rock
amazing
stars.
rock stars.
But at the end of the day, when we interview them, when we talk to them, to a T, everyone will talk about the connection, the emotional connection, the physical touches that happen, the fun they have with one another, knowing that sexual intimacy is important to both partners. And I think that's the beauty of the challenge. It's not just, well, we're going to have sex for a certain number of days. It's really, this is about our connection and about making our marriage a priority.
Ah, so lovely. And yeah, I don't know, would you suggest this to maybe some of these parents who are, maybe not exactly where they want to be? Like, I mean, everyone decides for themselves, but is it wise to do a sex challenge when you're in that state?
Our children were 5 and 2 when we did our first one at 60 days. So everybody
Wow.
can make their own
Yeah, I
decision.
think
I
that
don't.
as a coach, it really, I think it depends on a lot of factors, and it's not just a blanket statement of yes, because when you say,
Sure.
when people are in a certain state, I mean, that could be everything from, really struggling and considering divorce to just feeling super tired because there's a newborn in the house and everything in between. And so I think it's, if people are curious about it, I think the most important thing is for a husband and wife to have a conversation.
Mm.
Hey, what could this,
Mhm.
like, would you be interested? What could this look like for the two of us? How many days might we want to try? And then, even if all they do is have a conversation about it, I mean, that's been the theme of this entire episode, right? What do those conversations look like? How do couples get the conversation started to even explore what something like a sex challenge could do for their marriage?
I wouldn't let the age of children though stop you.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying there is don't let the age of
Yeah.
your children stop you from connecting.
don't let your kids ever be your
Yeah.
excuse for not making your marriage a priority.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's in the end what they need, right? The kids too. So yeah. Yeah. Thanks for talking about that. And yeah, one thing I just wanted to mention before we wrap up is because I also learned about it from you is the walk and talk, which is really the goal is connection, right? Which is also something that we want in our families. So yeah, it's just time to take as a couple, but also I don't know if you ever say like this is also can be a family thing. And maybe some families are doing that, right, already. And I just want to say keep doing it. Like this is such a
Absolutely.
golden time that we need to prioritize.
Yep. Yeah. Walk and talks are wonderful. If you're doing it as a family, it's great because you get your kids out and you get them talking, right? You get to hear things that you don't normally do. Our children weren't big talkers like that. If we got them food, then they would talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, I think, for our children, that's what we landed on more so for them. But if you are doing it as a family, great. I think as a couple, especially as of these things that we've been talking about around like, well, we're disconnected around our sexual intimacy. How do we discuss it? I think a lot of times we feel like we're forced or we need to only be able to talk about it in our bedroom. And that's where I think Alisa and I got to. It's like when we were young marrieds, people would be like, hey, older folks would share with us or myself, like sit across from your wife, hold her hands, be knee to knee, look in her eyes and have this deep conversation. And I'm thinking that is stressful and scary. And so just us moving that, from we're face to face to we're shoulder to shoulder, and we have some movement, that recreational intimacy, that activity, it just opened up so much more. And take it out of the bedroom, take it out of the living room, take it out of the kitchen, get that conversation flowing. And it's been wonderful for us. And I know many others in the one family who've begun to do that for their own lives and their own marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so awesome. So yeah, please do it if you're not, or find your own way, right, to connect. Yeah, maybe meal times, whatever it is for your family. Yeah, thank you so much, Tony and Alisa. Thank you so much for what you do. I think it's so awesome that you've impacted so many marriages over generations. So yeah, keep it up. And thank you so much for being here today.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
for having us.